You know that thing where you're eating something you really love, and you get to the last few bites, and you start slowing down? Smaller bites, longer pauses, not because you're full, because some part of you is trying to make it last. Hold on to that feeling, we'll come back to it, because here's what I want to talk about today. What if nothing ended? Your favorite song never hits its last note, it just keeps going. Your favorite movie never rolls credits, that vacation never ends, that conversation never wraps up, it all just continues. Sounds incredible, right? Give it about 3 days. You'd be begging for it to stop, because here's the strange thing about endings. The moment something loses its ending, it also loses its meaning, which is unfortunate because if there's one thing humans are spectacularly bad at, it's letting things end. Relationships, jobs, dreams, arguments, friendships, TV shows that absolutely should have wrapped up 2 seasons ago, but somehow there's a 6th season now, and nobody knows why. We hold on to things well past their expiration date, like a kind of emotional hoarder, except instead of old newspapers, it's old versions of our lives. And honestly, somewhere in your life right now, there's probably something that's already over. It just hasn't gotten the memo yet. My name is Marcus, and today, that's the whole thing we're digging into. Finished things, and why learning to actually let something finish might be one of the most underrated skills nobody ever teaches you. So let's start with the obvious question. Why do people hate endings so much? I mean, genuinely, why? Because logically, endings are everywhere. Every meal ends, every day ends, every conversation ends, every season ends, every movie ends. Endings aren't the exception. They're kind of the whole format, and yet we treat them like a bug, like a glitch in the system. Wait, no, this wasn't supposed to happen. Wasn't it though? From where I'm standing, ending appears to be the single most consistent thing reality does. Think about how much human suffering comes down to arguing with that one basic fact. A relationship ends, a career ends, youth ends, a friendship quietly fades, a parent passes away, a kid grows up and stops needing you the way they used to, and our first reaction every time is some version of outrage, like reality broke a contract we never actually signed. Here's the thing though, the problem usually isn't that something ended. The problem is that we secretly expected it not to. We're weirdly good at this, by the way. We move into an apartment we're renting for 1 year, and somehow within a month we're emotionally attached to the weird water stain on the ceiling like it's a family heirloom. We meet people and just assume they'll always be around, not consciously, but somewhere in there, and then reality shows up with a baseball bat, and we're shocked every single time. Imagine a guy, let's call him Dave, who touches a hot stove every morning for 30 years. And every single morning he's stunned. Ow, why does it keep doing that? At some point you'd pull Dave aside and go, Dave, buddy. At this point, this might be on you. And yet that's basically how most of us treat impermanence. We keep being surprised that temporary things turn out to be temporary. Now, before anyone thinks I'm about to say, so stop being sad, I'm not. Endings hurt. Sometimes they hurt enormously. Sometimes they split your life into a clean before and after. What I'm saying is, pain and wrongness aren't the same thing. Something can hurt terribly without being a mistake, and a lot of us spend years trying to reverse endings that were never actually supposed to be reversed. And honestly, the clearest way to see all of this has nothing to do with relationships or jobs or any of the heavy stuff. It's something a lot smaller. Cherry blossoms, actually. Stick with me, this goes somewhere good. In Japan, cherry blossoms are kind of a big deal. People travel across the entire country just to see them. There are festivals, poetry, paintings, songs, an absurd amount of cultural devotion to a flower. Why? Because they don't last. If cherry blossoms stayed on the trees all year, forever, no change, nobody would care. They'd just be trees, background scenery. You'd drive past 100 of them a day and never once look up. The reason they're beautiful is because they're disappearing while you watch. You get a few days, maybe a week, and then they're gone. And here's the part that gets me. We understand this completely when it comes to flowers, but the second it's a relationship or a job or being young or just life, suddenly we're confused. Suddenly it's unfair. Suddenly, but I wanted it to stay. Same logic. Totally different reaction. So if endings are actually what make things valuable, let's push that idea as far as it can go. Picture a movie that never ends, not a long movie, an infinite one. No credits, no final scene, no resolution. You're just watching for 3 weeks. People brushing their teeth, doing laundry, paying taxes, checking emails they've been avoiding for 3 weeks. We've all been there, Dave. At what point does it stop being a story and just become footage? Right. The ending wasn't separate from the story. The ending was part of what made it a story in the first place. Without it, it's just things happening forever. And here's the slightly uncomfortable question that follows. What if life works the same way? What if meaning actually requires a limit? I don't know yet. But hold on to that one. We're not done with it. This is usually where people start to squirm a little, because modern culture sells one very specific fantasy over and over in 100 different packagings. The fantasy of forever, forever young, forever relevant, forever winning, forever growing, forever becoming. And nobody ever stops to ask the obvious question, why? Why is forever automatically the goal? Because honestly, most of the things we actually treasure aren't valuable despite ending. They're valuable because they end. The last day of school, the final conversation with an old friend before they move away, the last chapter of a book you didn't want to put down, the final night of a trip that was somehow exactly long enough. The ending is often the thing that turns an event into a memory, which raises a question worth actually sitting with. What turns an experience into a memory in the first place? And speaking of memory, let's talk about nostalgia for a second, because it's one of the weirder things humans do. Nostalgia is basically emotional recycling. You take a bunch of moments that, at the time, were not particularly great. Being bored as a kid, awkward family dinners, the genuinely miserable experience of studying for exams, and your brain quietly edits all of it into a highlight reel labeled the good old days. Your brain cuts the boring parts and keeps the good bits. Your brain is basically Netflix. But, and here's the catch, nostalgia only works because those moments ended. You cannot be nostalgic about something that's still happening. The ending creates the frame creates the memory, and the memory is where the meaning actually lives. Okay, so here's where I want to bring this back to you for a second. Is there something in your life right now that's already over, but you haven't said it out loud yet? Maybe to anyone, maybe even to yourself. A relationship, a goal, a version of a plan, a version of you. Just sit with that for a second. We'll come back to it. But first, there's a version of this that's a little harder to talk about, because sometimes the thing you need to let go of isn't a person. It's you, or an older version of you. This one's harder than people expect. The athlete who can't compete anymore. The person who used to be the funny one and isn't sure who they are without it. The gifted kid who grew up into a perfectly normal adult and never quite forgave the world for that. The rebellious 20-year-old who is now 42 and recently discovered the existence of lower back pain. At some point, life leans in and quietly asks, hey, would you like to become someone else now? And a lot of people just go, no thanks. I'll wait here, and then spend the next decade arguing with a question that was never optional. Here's a fun and slightly unsettling way to think about it. The 10-year-old version of you is gone. The 16-year-old version is gone. The 20-year-old version is gone. Even the version of you from 5 years ago, gone. And yet somehow, you're still here. Life is basically a long series of small funerals that nobody sends invitations to. Old dreams die, old fears die, old identities die, and if you're lucky, something better moves into the space they leave behind. But that's the part people skip. Replacement requires space. You can't fully step into the next chapter while both hands are still gripping the last one. It's like trying to move into a new apartment while refusing to leave the old one. You'd look completely unhinged. Sir, you have 2 beds now in 2 different buildings. But emotionally, people do this constantly. They want the next thing, but they won't let go of the current thing. They want growth, but not change. They want a new chapter, but the same characters, same setting, same everything, which is a little like wanting to learn to swim without getting wet. And here's the part that took me a while to actually get. Letting go isn't something you do once. It's something you keep doing, quietly, constantly. Every year asks you to release something. Every season does. Every chapter does. And the people who seem most at peace, it's not that they're the strongest or the bravest or whatever. It's that they're the most flexible. They stop demanding permanence from a world that was never built to provide it. They stop treating endings like personal attacks, and they start seeing them for what they actually are. Transitions, doors, and maybe that's the real beauty of finished things. A finished thing is complete. A finished song doesn't need another verse. A finished book doesn't need another chapter. A finished sunset doesn't need another hour. Completion has a kind of dignity to it, a shape, a weight, and sometimes the most respectful thing you can do for something that mattered to you is let it actually be finished, not fixed, not revived, not dragged forward for 10 more years out of guilt or habit or fear of the silence after. Just finished. Remember that question I asked you to hold on to, whether meaning actually needs a limit? I think I had it slightly backwards. It's not just that the ending creates the frame or the memory or any of that. Here's what I've actually come to suspect. The reason endings feel so hard isn't that they destroy meaning. It's that they reveal it. The last page tells you what the story was actually about. The final note tells you what the whole song was quietly building toward. The entire time, the ending doesn't erase what came before it. It's what finally lets you see it clearly. So if there's something in your life right now that's already over, a dream, a relationship, a version of you that's been quietly waiting for permission to retire, maybe the goal isn't to save it. Maybe the goal is just to thank it, to actually look at it for a second. Let it have been real, let it have mattered, and then let it go. Not because it didn't matter, because it did. Remember that thing I asked you about at the start? Eating slower near the end of something you love. That instinct to slow down, to stretch it out, to delay the last bite for just a little longer. That's not really about the food. That's just what we do. With everything, with summers, with relationships, with certain versions of ourselves. We slow down near the end because some part of us already knows what's coming, and maybe that's okay. Maybe that small ache right near the end of something good isn't a sign that something's going wrong. It's just proof that it mattered. So finish the bite, whatever yours is.